Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. Hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. This is a very hot day here in coastal North Carolina, and it's the end of the month, so it's time to talk about September. And if you live in coastal North Carolina, great. You can go by what I do. If you live north of me, then you may need to adjust, and if you live south of me, you may need to adjust a little bit later. So these are what we're doing in our garden, what we're planting, and the plans for our garden for the month of September in the year of our Lord 2024. So I just came out here, and this is where we direct sowed our cabbages, and the raccoon visited us last night, but we got a little bit lucky and we had germination, and so he flicked all of our seeds out. So we're just gonna gently put them back in to their spot. Talk about dodging a bullet, man. This guy is such a dick. So we're gonna go through here after this video and get everything set up. It looks like we did in fact get germination, which is good because the heat is coming. So we're gonna have to fix this. Tell you what, he hadn't been here for about a month, and bam, he's back. So anyways, September is getting down to the wire. So we've got, what do we have going on here? We've got 60-ish days until our first frost. So anything that goes in the ground needs to either be 1, frost hardy, 2, a quick grower, or 3, in my specific garden, it needs to need less sunlight. So luckily we have all of that planned out. And what I do is I'm gonna start from the beginning of the month, and I'm gonna attempt to work my way through. So again, if you live north of me, you can go a little bit earlier. And if you live south of me, you can go a little bit later. And we'll see how it goes. But everything is coming along. It is very slow right now, which is expected. The first thing we're gonna do, instead of plant real quick, is we're going to be adding shade here, and probably that far bed over there. And well, as a matter of fact, once we get everything harvested, we're going to be adding shade to all the beds. So there's that. But we will be pulling the shade from this one soon because we want to let our plants grow. And the last thing you ever want to do is have a shade cloth and then have the shade cloth sitting on top of the plant, because that actually makes it even hotter. So we just need to make sure before the sun hits this that we get it off, and just like that, it's done. So that'll get us going in the right direction. This is the month in which we really do employ shade in our garden because we have new things growing. We have stuff we've direct sowed. We're doing experiments this year. So we're trying to stay on the right path with that. So we need to really protect these delicate seedlings. And today, like I said, it's in the 90s. Tomorrow, the next day, it'll be in the 90s. But early next week, it's supposed to be in the high in the mid 70s, which is unheard of. So that's going to give us a really good opportunity to get plants either hardened off or put in the ground, because we do have some transplants that we're going to put in. So we're going to work on that as well. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to continue planting. I'm going to do another round of cabbages in this bed. So we're going to direct sow those very soon. And then we're going to finish cleaning out this bed here and this bed here, and we will get our plants hardened off so we can start that, and then that'll put us into the first week of September. And we are going to direct sow our pak choi. Pak choi will end up going in this bed. I believe I've made up my mind. So we're gonna do probably a double row of pak choi here, and then maybe 2 double rows. I'm not really totally sure, but what I do know, actually I am gonna do a double row, because what I'll do is I'll put my seedlings here in the first row, and then in the row in front of it, we'll put our seeds into the ground so that they won't get overshadowed, because the majority of our sun comes from this direction. So we'll get those in the ground, and I believe I'm also going to direct sow our Chinese cabbage in this bed too. So I've not really had good luck with it, and I want to try it again, and I believe that this front half of this bed is going to be a really good candidate for it. So we'll do that, and then in this bed here, where the buckwheat was, and it is starting, you know, I don't know if you're new to the channel, thank you for being here, and if you're not, you know that we harvested our buckwheat, but it had gone to seed because of the hurricane. We couldn't get out in time, and we're just letting it kind of see what's going to germinate, and then once it's done germinating, shouldn't be too long. I've still got water pumping to it, then we're going to turn the bed, and that'll just terminate all those crops. So what we'll do in this bed is I believe we're going to end up doing our kale and collards in this bed. So it's pretty simple. In our area, the kale and the collards can go the whole winter. So we don't really need to do a whole lot. We need to do one row of each at minimum. So we'll probably do the back row of collards because they tend to get, or kale because they tend to get taller. Collards in the next row. And then for this, what we'll do is we'll do another row of mustard greens. And so we'll fill that up with mustard greens completely. It'll get us through the winter for greens, typically speaking. And once we harvest our popcorn, then we'll pull the bed. What I'm gonna do is, this is all popcorn first of all. Shouldn't have grown it. It's way too much space for popcorn, but I wanted to try it and we got it. It is what it is. But we are getting semi close to it. So what we'll do is we'll harvest that. We're gonna save the stalks for decorations. So you remember, you can do that as well. I'm not buying it. Screw that, I've grown it and looked at it all this time. I'm gonna enjoy it as long as possible. We'll give this bed a really good weeding. And then this bed is gonna be our turnips, our lettuce, and radishes. So we'll probably do lettuce in the back, turnips in the next row, and then radishes in the next row. And that'll be a kind of a quick, you know, that'll probably last until roughly January. And then that bed should be done. And we'll put our starts out around, I might actually try and get them out in the cool part of next week. No, I can't because it'll still be in there. So as soon as this gets up, but if I was doing it normal, and especially if I was direct seeding, I would do it around the second week of September and get the stuff in the ground and get it going. What we've also got here, we've got this sweet potato bed that's going to be harvested probably next week. It's starting to fill up, and we actually had the deer come back again. Every once in a while he'll visit us, not often, but he kind of trimmed the top. So I figured, you know what, it's good to go. You can see right in here where he trimmed the tops, and then all of this is untouched. So I believe this is time to pull it. So we're going to pull this up too, and in this bed we're probably going to mirror this bed. So, you know, these crops won't last a long time. Now, because this half of my garden gets shade, this half of my garden gets more sun, I anticipate that this garden will last longer into the winter. This bed will last longer than this bed. And since that's coming up next week, more than likely, I'm always reserve the right to change my mind, but I'm pretty sure it is, then what we'll do is we're gonna plant the lettuce seedlings in the back row probably about a week later. Probably about a week later, as long as the weather is conducive to it. And then we'll seed probably at the same time because we want to just get everything watered real good. And that'll get us going in that bed, and that'll pretty much be set up. And what we'll do is we'll turn and burn it. So what does that mean? That means if the radishes are a quick crop, if we plant them now, they should be done roughly around the probably the second week of October. So then we could just turn right back around and put another round of radishes in and get those right around November into December. And then that would wrap up that bed. Same with the turnips, they can take a little bit longer, but still, it doesn't really matter. We'll just keep planting that bed over and over until it's too cold, and then it'll be done. This bed right here, we have our 2 rows of rutabagas, and we have rutabaga starts that we will put out here as well next week. So we're gonna do that as well. If I was direct sowing them, I would do them anywhere between the 1st and the 3rd week of September. 3rd week would be really close call, but I believe you could get enough growth in to keep it going. Keep that going as long as possible. And then in this bed over here where the broccoli is, I'll show you. Broccoli, so we sowed these 2 rows right here of broccoli. And then we've got plants that we'll put in this row, and any gaps that we have, we'll backfill with that. So we're looking probably about the second week of September, we'll get those plants in the ground. It'll give these little seedlings that are in here enough time to get up to see what's gonna struggle and what's not. And then that'll keep us going in the right direction. We'll finish out this other bed with cabbages. Same time frame, you know, that they're already gonna have a jump start. So we can get those in probably second to, well, let me rephrase that. As soon as the seedlings are hardened off, so it looks like we're gonna do it next week, then we'll probably go ahead and put our cabbages in, because once we start getting these cool days, it's not a constant cool down. It becomes very, I mean, it's a yo-yo season, you know, it's the heartbreak zone is what I call it. It'll get cool and then it'll get hot and it'll get cool, but the overall trend, if you zoom out and not look macro, will be cooler and cooler. So we can start to get these plants in and get them comfortable in the beds where they want to be for the season. Now it is getting time to be greenhouse time. And what we're gonna do with this is, it is clearly a cluster F, is we've got to gut this thing completely and weed it, and it's like this every year. So as soon as we get that cool weather, we're going to get in here, because it's over 100 degrees in there right now, and we're gonna pull everything out, fix the irrigation, and then we're gonna start running it. The difference with this greenhouse is you can't just, you can't just plant it like you would the rest of your garden. You've got to be later. You can be later in the fall and earlier in the spring. And so we need to keep that in mind. So what I want to do is just go ahead and get it prepped. We'll have the irrigation running with everything else, and that way the soil can start to get damp. We'll amend it and all that. Hopefully early next week we'll get that done and get it prepared. And then everything that I've said I'd plant in here is going to be at minimum 2 weeks delayed from planted in there. I do need to find a space for my spinach, which would go, we will direct seed those the second week in September. So there will be some kind of adjustment out here to factor that into it. We have to remember that I am also 4 beds down for the fall season, because our wild garden is just done and we're moving it. So we're kind of down by that aspect, so we'll get that going, but I have to keep that into account. And then I've also got my containers that I want to plant in. So our containers are going to end up having broccoli, cabbage, probably just broccoli and cabbage, to be honest. And then that looks, I think that's basically all we're going to put into them. There may be a Chinese cabbage that squeaks in or something like that, but for the most part, I think we're just gonna do those. I think they look good and they're just easier to take care of in there. You know, we're racing the clock for our frost, but at the same time, all of these plants that I've mentioned to you can survive a frost, if not down to freezing, past freezing, 26 degrees. So we're gonna talk about that. Probably next video, we're going to talk about temperatures, because it's really, really important. And you know, everything is the most important, but depends on when you're planting and what season you're talking about is what the more important aspect is. And once we understand these key elements that we're going to discuss, you'll get it more. So make sure you tune in for that. It should be the next video, which would be Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. So, and then everything else, we may put a round of peas in the last week of September. It would be on one of these trellises over here. We will probably put some peas in. I always wanted to have a fall crop, never really pulled it off, so I got plenty of peas. We'll just give it a shot and see what happens. But yeah, soon you're gonna see this planted, and then you're gonna see it all with shade all over it. It's gonna look a little ridiculous, but that's the kind of season we're in, and that's what it takes to grow this time of year. What are you doing in your gardens? What are you planting in September, and are you ready for the fall season? Because in my mind, it is one of the more enjoyable seasons. We get to soak up the last bit of warmth, and we get to work in the cool weather before it gets real cold, and it's just an overall joy.